He didn't just beat Casper Ruud, he sent a message to the entire tennis world. For 37 minutes, Carlos Alcaraz turned one of the most consistent players on the ATP Tour into a spectator. The scoreline says 6-1, 7-6, but that barely tells the real story of what happened at Indian Wells. Because this match wasn't just about reaching the quarter-finals, it was about something bigger. Carlos Alcaraz is chasing history in the California desert, a third Indian Wells title, and after watching this performance, you start to wonder if anyone in the draw can actually stop him. But before we get ahead of ourselves, there's a twist waiting later in this story, and it involves a player who has already beaten him. More on that in a moment. First, let's talk about what happened on court. When Alcaraz walked onto stadium court to face Casper Ruud, there was a sense that this could be a real battle. Ruud is not just another top player. He's a former world number 2, a 3-time Grand Slam finalist, and someone who has built a reputation as one of the toughest competitors on tour. But within minutes, it became clear something was different. Alcaraz came out swinging like a man on a mission. The forehand was explosive. The footwork was electric, and perhaps most impressive of all, his confidence was absolutely sky-high. From the very first game, Alcaraz pushed Ruud behind the baseline. Every rally felt like it was being played on the Spaniard's terms, and that's when the pressure started building. Ruud is known for his heavy topspin forehand and relentless baseline consistency. Normally he grinds opponents down, but against Alcaraz in this opening set, he barely had time to breathe. Drop shots pulled him forward, deep forehands pushed him back, and every time Ruud tried to settle into a rally, Alcaraz changed the pace again. Within just 37 minutes, the first set was gone. 6-1. That number alone tells you how brutal it was. But here's the crazy part. The scoreline could have been even more one-sided. Alcaraz actually created 8 break opportunities during that opening set, and only converted 3 of them. In other words, he left chances on the table. Think about that for a second. When a player dominates that hard and still feels like they could have done more damage, it says everything about the level they're playing at that. That moment, the crowd inside Indian Wells started to feel it. Something special might be happening, but tennis has a funny way of changing momentum, and Casper Ruud wasn't ready to disappear quietly. The second set became a completely different story. Ruud adjusted his tactics. He slowed the pace. He started mixing higher topspin balls into rallies and forced Alcaraz to hit one extra shot and then another. Suddenly, the rallies got longer. The Norwegian began holding serve more comfortably, and the match developed the kind of tension you expect when 2 top players lock horns. Game after game passed without a break, and the pressure kept rising. For Ruud, this was the moment to turn the match around. If he could steal the second set, the entire dynamic would shift. But Alcaraz has built a reputation for something special. When the pressure peaks, he usually finds another gear. That's exactly what happened when the set reached a tiebreak. Now, if you're a tennis fan, you know, tiebreaks can be chaos. Momentum swings fast. One bad point can decide everything, but Alcaraz approached it like a veteran champion. His first few points were aggressive but controlled. No panic, no hesitation, just pure execution. He stepped into returns, he attacked second serves, and he played with the same fearless mentality that has made him one of the most exciting players in the sport. Before Ruud could even settle into the breaker, the Spaniard had taken control. 7-2, match over. And just like that, Carlos Alcaraz punched his ticket into the Indian Wells quarterfinals. But what makes this run even more fascinating is the context surrounding it. Alcaraz isn't just another contender in this tournament, he's the defending champion. In fact, he lifted the trophy here in 2024, after defeating Daniil Medvedev in the final. That victory cemented his dominance at Indian Wells and reminded everyone why the desert conditions suit his game so well. The slower courts give him time to unleash his creativity. The bounce helps his heavy topspin forehand, and the atmosphere, well, the crowd absolutely loves him here. You could feel that energy again during this match. Every highlight shot from Alcaraz triggered a roar from the stands. Every sliding forehand winner brought fans to their feet. Indian Wells has always been called The fifth Grand Slam, and performances like this show exactly why. But now comes the part of the story that makes things really interesting. Because the next opponent standing across the net is someone who has already proven he can beat Carlos Alcaraz. Cameron Norrie. If that name sounds familiar in the context of Indian Wells, it should. Norrie is a former champion here. He knows these courts. He knows the conditions. And perhaps most importantly, he knows how to frustrate top players. The upcoming quarterfinal is also carrying some history. The last time these two players met was at the Paris Masters last year. And guess what happened? Norrie won.it wasn't easy. It took 3 sets, but the British star walked away with the victory. In fact, that win gave him his 3rd career victory over Alcaraz. That statistic alone should make tennis fans pause for a second, because beating Alcaraz once is impressive. Beating him 3 times is something very few players can say. Now, to be fair, every match is different. Conditions change, form changes, confidence shifts. And right now, Carlos Alcaraz looks like a player who is fully locked in. His movement is explosive. His shot selection is sharp, and perhaps most importantly, he's playing with joy. You can see it in the way he smiles after incredible points. You can hear it in the crowd reactions when he pulls off something ridiculous like a running forehand winner or a perfectly disguised drop shot. That joy is contagious. But tennis history is full of moments where dangerous matchups disrupt even the hottest streaks, and that's what makes this upcoming quarterfinal so fascinating. Cameron Norrie is exactly the type of player who can complicate things. He's left-handed, which immediately changes the rally patterns. His defensive skills are underrated, and he has this ability to turn matches into physical, grinding battles that test patience as much as power. For someone like Alcaraz, who thrives on rhythm and attacking instincts, that can sometimes create tricky situations. Now, I want to be clear about something. Right now, Alcaraz absolutely deserves to be the favorite. What we saw against Casper Ruud was a masterclass in controlled aggression. But the deeper you go in a tournament like Indian Wells, the more the pressure builds. That's where the real champions separate themselves. Because winning one big match is impressive. Winning 5 or 6 in a row against elite competition is something else entirely. If Alcaraz wants that 3rd Indian Wells title, he still has several major obstacles ahead. Norrie is just the next chapter. But if the Spaniard keeps playing at this level, the rest of the draw might start feeling very nervous. There's also another layer to this story that fans are beginning to talk about. Momentum. Tennis. Seasons are long, and players often build confidence through specific tournaments where they feel comfortable. For Carlos Alcaraz, Indian Wells might be becoming one of those places. Just like Rafael Nadal had Roland Garros, just like Roger Federer had Wimbledon. Certain venues simply bring out the best in certain players. Now, it would be way too early to compare those legendary streaks to what Alcaraz is doing here, but the feeling is starting to grow. When he steps onto these courts, something clicks. The timing feels natural, the crowd support fuels him, and suddenly, the game looks almost effortless. That's exactly the kind of energy that turns great players into champions. But here's where things get really interesting. Some whispers around the tennis world suggest this could be a defining moment for Alcaraz's 2026 season. Right now, the competition at the top of men's tennis is fierce. Every tournament feels like a battlefield. Young stars are emerging, veterans are still dangerous, and the margins between victory and defeat are incredibly thin. So when a player finds a tournament where everything aligns, it can spark something bigger. A deep run at Indian Wells could launch Alcaraz into a dominant stretch across the rest of the year. That's not a guarantee, but it's a possibility that tennis fans are starting to discuss. And if you're Casper Ruud, watching from the other side of the net, you probably felt that momentum building during this match. To his credit, Ruud didn't collapse. He fought harder in the second set. He adjusted his tactics, and he forced Alcaraz to earn the victory in that tiebreak. But sometimes in tennis, you simply run into a player who is operating at a different level that day. That seemed to be the case here. And as the final point ended, and Alcaraz raised his arms in celebration, the message was clear. The defending champion is still very much alive in this tournament. Now the spotlight shifts to the quarterfinal. Carlos Alcaraz versus Cameron Norrie. A matchup filled with history. A matchup filled with tactical intrigue. And a matchup that could decide whether Alcaraz's dream of a third Indian Wells crown continues or suddenly stops. Because if there's one thing tennis fans have learned over the years, it's this: in the desert of Indian Wells, nothing is guaranteed. And sometimes, the player everyone expects to win faces the opponent they least want to see. So, now I want to hear from you. Do you think Carlos Alcaraz is unstoppable at Indian Wells this year, or could Cameron Norrie pull off another surprise and end the Spaniard's title run? Drop your prediction in the comments, and if you love following the biggest stories, rivalries, and behind-the-scenes drama in the world of tennis, make sure you stick around, because this tournament is just getting started. And here on RedDust Report, we'll be tracking every twist along the way.